أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. Before we begin this discussion, we remind ourselves that if the purpose is to recollect and remind ourselves of certain realities whereby we hope to achieve some guidance and therefore some perfection, any progress toward perfection necessarily will face certain obstacles and obstruction. Satan definitely will try to deviate and distract us. And therefore we need to seek the protection of Allah, who is the all-knowing one and therefore knows our problems, and who is the all-powerful one and therefore has the power to help us, and who is the all-loving one and therefore has the willingness to help us if we sincerely and earnestly seek His protection. Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. Because we seek to gain some guidance, and because guidance is a form of perfection, therefore we need to seek help from Allah because of three reasons. Number one, because He's the absolute perfect being, and therefore any perfection, any goodness will necessarily originate from Him and Him alone, though it may reach us after passing through a variety of mediums and intermediaries. And the second reason we seek His help and guidance is because He is Rahman. He loves us. His rahmah, His care, His attention reaches out to each and every entity in the universe, brings it to existence as an expression of His rahmah, provides it for all that's necessary for its perfection, and sustains it and maintains it. And thirdly, we seek His help because He is Rahim, His extra love, His continuous mercy, His abundant grace, His unlimited blessings are available to those amongst us who believe in Him and who admit to His existence and who submit to His will. والصلاة والسلام على سيدنا ونبينا محمد وآله الطاهرين. And we send our salutations and our greetings and our expression of love and loyalty to the Holy Prophet of Islam, that most perfect man who managed to reach the pinnacle of perfection, the highest level possible for any human being, because of two reasons. Number one, his understanding of who God is, of what God's infinite attributes of perfection are, of how God moment by moment is governing and running the universe. His understanding was the maximum possible for any human being. And secondly, this comprehension translated itself into action in his life, personally, whether be it at his mental level or emotional level or physical level, or be it public in the economic sphere or cultural sphere or educational or political. In all dimensions of his life, he was the most humble and the most submissive to the will of God. And we send our salutations and greetings on his holy progeny, who are almost his equivalents, indeed secondary to him. And especially so, our expression of love and loyalty goes out to the third holy Imam, who sacrificed all that God had given him for the cause of establishing godly values and justice on the earth, and thereby creating a supreme role model of a movement which can then serve as a source of inspiration for all future movements until the final culminating global revolution to establish godly values and justice on the earth. Elders in Islam, brethren in Islam, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah. Assemblies like these have been encouraged by the holy Imams, and we have been informed that there is tremendous reward promised for it. However, the reward is conditional on the participants being able to identify the values, the godly values, to imbibe them and to integrate them in their lives, thereby bringing about a transformation. which would then qualify us to deserve to receive those tremendous rewards. I wish to concentrate on certain godly values that relate directly to this particular evening. Thursday evening was also the eve of Ashura in the 60th year of Hijrah. On the 9th of Muharram, that is the Thursday, Umar al-Sa'd launched an attack. Imam alayhi salam sends a contingent of about 20 horsemen under the leadership of Abbas, including Zuhair and Habib, to go and find out what is happening. They meet, and the camp of Umar al-Sa'd declares their intention for war. Abbas asks for permission to consult with the Imam. He goes back to the Imam, who tells him, "Irja' ilayhim," go back and make a request. فَإِنِ اسْتَطَعْتَ أَن تُؤَخِّرَهُمْ إِلَى غَدَاةٍ وَتَدْفَعَهُمْ عَنَّا الْعَشِيَّةِ لَعَلَّنَا نُصَلِّي لِرَبِّنَا اللَّيْلَ وَنَدْعُوهُ وَنَسْتَغْفِرُهُ. Abbas, go back and seek respite for this one night, because we want to engage in prayer, in supplication, and to seek forgiveness from God. فَهُوَ يَعْلَمُ أَنِّي كُنْتُ أُحِبُّ الصَّلَاةَ لَهُ وَتِلَاوَةَ كِتَابِهِ وَكَثْرَةَ الدُّعَاءِ وَالْإِسْتِغْفَارِ. Because my Lord knows that Hussein loves intensely this activity of praying to him, and he knows that I love to recite his book too, and he knows that I love to engage in dua frequently 3, and I love to seek forgiveness from him 4. Abbas, of course, manages to obtain that respite. Interestingly enough, Imam says that we want respite for this night. The eve of Friday, the Thursday night, has got its own significance. Seeking respite could have served other purposes also. It would have afforded also the opportunity to the Imam to continue his process of invitation and try to awaken and therefore bring over more people away from falsehood onto the camp of truth. Some did cross over. In addition, it could also serve the purpose also of enabling Imam to prepare his own camp for the actual confrontation, and also those who are going to survive, to strengthen them and to consolidate them and to guide them how to control themselves and conduct themselves after the massacre. This respite, therefore, served certain crucial goals. However, in order to appreciate the significance of what the companions and the Imam himself engaged in tonight, we need to remind ourselves of some of the comments made by the enemy, and some of the comments made by the Imam himself, and thirdly, some of the comments made by the preceding and the succeeding Imams about the companions. As far as the enemy is concerned, Ibn Abil Hadid, a historian, narrates an incident where somebody went and blamed one of the members of the army of Umar al-Sa'd. How could you be so merciless and pitiless to carry out this brutal campaign of a massacre of the son of the daughter of the Prophet? Look at this man's justification. It's not acceptable, but it gives us the picture from that side. The man said, I swear if you were with us on that day, on the day of Ashura, لو شهدت ما شهدنا لفعلت ما فعلنا. I swear you would have done the same that we did. You know what we saw on that day? لقد ثارت علينا العصابة أيديها على مقابض سيوفها كالأسود الضارية. I swear by God, we had a party of people against us on that day who firmly held their hands on their swords and they struck at us like ferocious lions. No. تحطم الفرسان يمينا وشمالا. They smashed our ranks right and left. No. تلقي أنفسها على الموت. They plunged themselves onto the valley of death. لا تقبلوا الأمان. You couldn't buy them off. لا ترغبوا المال. You can't bribe them. لا يحول حائل بينهم وبين الورود على حياض المنية. I swear they were unstoppable. You know what? If even we hesitated for a moment, they would have destroyed us. لا لك. Woe be to you. What should have we done? Amazing. A small group of companions with this indomitable spirit, with this highly charged, motivated, determined spirit to face death and to defend the cause of truth. That's a sterling, prominent characteristic of this band. Question: where did it come from? Answer: perhaps an indication. Observe. The narration says that when Imam Ali on one of his expeditions was returning back to Kufa, he passed by Karbala and then he made a comment about Karbala. Ha huna munakhur rikab wa masari'ul ushaq. Let me tell you, this ground of Karbala is the place where some horsemen in the future will come and rest. This is a place where will be killed people who are totally engrossed in the love of God. Shuhada, they are martyrs who will be slain in the way of Allah. لا يسبقهم من كان قبلهم ولا يلحقهم من كان بعدهم. I swear none of the communities before them can ever reach their status. None of the people who will come after them can attain their position. Amazing group of companions. Are you surprised therefore the subsequent Imams then report, Assalamu alaikum ayyuhar rabbaniyun. Peace and greetings and salutations. Oh, our expression of love to you. Oh, those who are totally devoted to God. Question: if the secret of success of this small band of followers was the fact that they were devoted to God, allow me therefore to offer this justification and explanation that if we are to understand the godly values that guarantee the success of this group, it lies in these activities that they carried out on this night. That of salah, that of recitation of the Quran, that of dua, and that of istighfar. But we need to remind ourselves that these spiritual activities are not dead, empty, meaningless activities. They're rich. They have the power to transform an individual. Observe how. Oh, incidentally, it's not that before this night they did not engage in these activities. It's not that suddenly on this night there was an awakening and they intensified their spiritual activity. No. These companions were not ordinary people. Let me give you a sampling. Sa'id bin Abdullah al-Hanafi. كان من وجوه الشيعة بالكوفة. He was one of the prominent companions in Kufa. ذوي الشجاعة, brave and bold. Al-ibadatu fihim. And he was famous for his intense worship which he did publicly in Kufa. Look at the past lifestyle. كنان بن عتيق التغلبي كان بطلا من أبطال الكوفة. A hero from the heroes of Kufa. Not an ordinary man. عابدا من عبادها. Intensely engaging in worship. Suwayd bin Amr al-Khathami kana shaykhan, an old man, sharifan, honorable, abidan, intensely engaging in worship, kathir as-salah, often seen to be engaging in prayers. Nafi' bin Hilal al-Jamali kana sayyidan, a chief of his tribe, sharifan, honorable, shuja'an, brave, qari'an, intensely engaged with the Quran. Abis bin Abi Shabib al-Shakiri, ra'isan, shuja'an, khatiban, mutahajjidan, used to engage in prayers at night. Hanzala bin As'ad al-Shabami, قارئا شجاعا وجها من وجوه الشيعة. برير bin Khudayr al-Hamdani, shaykhan, an old man, tabi'iyan, companion, a follower of the companions, قارئا للقرآن, intensely engaged in the recitation of the Quran. Muslim bin Awsaja al-Asadi, rajulan sharifan abidan mutanassikan, a lifestyle of deep devotion to God in the past, which then culminated on this particular night. Allow me to offer an insight of how the Quran 1, the Dua 2, and the Salah 3 can potentially transform an individual to become a dedicated, devoted servant of God, ready to sacrifice his life for the sake of God. Quran. We believe that this book is the word of God. Surah Zukhruf, Allah says that Hamim wal Kitab al Mubin, this book has got a clear message, and we have sent it down, and it has appeared to you in the form of words. Inna ja'alnahu Qur'anan Arabiyyan. It's in the form of Arabic words. لَعَلَّكُمْ تَعْقِلُونَ. It appeals directly to your intellect so that it may stimulate you to think. And that's the demarcating factor between a human being and one who remains an animal, though outwardly he is human. However, in as much as it's in your hands and it's in Arabic and it's the word form, إِنَّهُ لدينا في الكتاب لعلي حكيم. At the same time that it's in your hands, it's also with us. Very high, very compact in the Kitab. Essentially, the Quran is an expression of the knowledge, the wisdom, the mercy of God. It has two ends. There's one end which is the physical end, which is in our hands. It's the word form. But that same Quran has got another dimension. The riwayah tells us, imagine if there's a rope of God. A rope which hangs down on the earth. You can cling onto it. You can pull yourself up. But remember this, that the other end, you know where the other end is? The other end is in the hands of the unlimited God, whose knowledge is unlimited. The same Quran, step by step, with every recitation, has the potential of pulling you up and elevating you to a station which has no limit in its perfection. 1. 2, therefore, the Quran introduces itself that it is a potentially majestic word. Don't confine yourself to the physical words. لو أنزلنا هذا القرآن على جبل لرأيته خاشعا متصدعا من خشية الله. If ever we were to reveal this book onto the mountains, you know what would happen? The mountains would be humble because of the majesty of God. No, the mountains would crumble because of the power of God manifesting itself. Would you then be surprised that a person who recites these words and experiences His majesty, he begins to tremble? إِذَا تُلِيَتْ عَلَيْهِمْ آيَاتُنَا زَادَتْهُ إِيمَانًا. Surah Anfal, chapter 8, ayah number 2. إِذَا ذُكِرَ اللَّهُ وَجِلَتْ قُلُوبُهُمْ. They begin to tremble. Surah Zumar, chapter 39, Allah says, Allahu anzala ahsan al-hadith. Allah has sent the best words possible to guide us. تَقْشَعِرُّ مِنْهُ جُلُودُ الَّذِينَ يَخْشَوْنَ رَبَّهُمْ. The skin quivers of those who fear God when they read this book. The book has the potential to raise us to an unlimited level. 2, it imbibes within itself majesty. 3, therefore it can shake our hearts. 4, look at the message, therefore. The reciter now has placed himself before the majesty and the mercy of God. And then he allows that message to penetrate his heart. What message does the Quran give? Messages, for example, which are relevant to the question of fighting for the cause of truth. Look at some of the verses which are discussed in the Quran. For example, Prophet Ibrahim, a lonely warrior against all manifestations of shirk. Chapter 21, Surah Anbiya, ayah number 67 and 68 describes his confrontation with the idolaters. When he smashed their idols, he declared to them, "Uffil lakum walima ta'buduna min dunillah." Woe be to you. I've got no respect at all for these dead idols and the way you have humiliated and debased yourself to a lifestyle of respect to something which is dead. Woe be to you. Response, قَالُوا حَرِّقُوهُ. Capture him and burn him to death. An individual who reads this ayah and understands the success and the victory of Ibrahim is inspired. You look at the case of Musa, you look at the case of Isa alayhi salam, you look at the case of all the prophets. Musa, the Quran has been sent down so that it can enable you to transport yourself away from darkness towards light. Kitabun anzalnahu litukhrij an-nas min adh-dhulumati ila an-nur. Experience enlightenment. Experience enlightenment in your mind, in your head, in your heart, and then translate it through your hands and your actions. Musa did exactly this. Chapter 14, that's Surah Ibrahim. Ayah number 5, Allah describes when Musa went to his community. You know what was his purpose? Exactly this. He wanted to deliver his people away from darkness towards light. وَلَقَدْ أَرْسَلْنَا مُوسَى بِآيَاتِنَا أَنْ أَخْرِجْ قَوْمَكَ مِنَ الظُّلُمَاتِ إِلَى النُّورِ. If the Quran is for the purpose of removing us from darkness, bring us towards light, it's not only personal development. The Quran gives us the message that the past prophets actually did the same for the whole community, for the whole nation, for the whole world. Look at the case of Isa alayhi salam. Isa was not a pacifist. Whoa, far from that. The Quran doesn't portray a picture of Jesus as a pacifist. Surah Saf, chapter 61, also known as the Surah of the battle, begins with the mention of description of those people who are beloved to God. Inna Allah yuhibbul ladhina yuqatiluna fi sabilihi saffan ka'annahum bunyanun marsus. Allah loves and therefore gears and directs the universe to work in the favor of those who sacrifice themselves in the way of God. Surah Saf towards the middle talks about encouraging people, come and make a transaction with your Lord. Give up what you have and buy from your Lord your salvation through jihad. And finally Surah Saf ends by saying, Ya ayyuhalladhina amanu kunu ansar Allah. You got an invitation to come and become a companion who will support God's cause. How? The same way Isa, son of Mary, told his special companions, Man ansari ilallah. Some believed and accepted, some rejected, and Allah's mercy and victory is available. A person on this night engaged in the recitation of the Quran, experiencing the majesty and the mercy of God, and the messages of inviting him to sacrifice in the way of God the same way as all the other prophets did before him. Would you then be surprised that the companions behaved the next day on Ashura the way they did? They were inspired by what the Quran said. No, we go one step ahead. The Quran promises rewards specifically for rising in the way of God. I've already mentioned this before, but it merits a repeat mention tonight. Chapter 9, Surah Tawbah, ayah number 20 onwards. Those who believe in God, and therefore they know the guidance from Him is good for them. In Alidina amanu wahajaru, and therefore they are ready to abandon whatever is holding them back. They're ready to make hijrah and abandon everything that's holding them back to practice godly laws. وَجَاهَدُوا فِي سَبِيلِ اللَّهِ, and they're ready to struggle and strive and sacrifice in the way of God. بِأَمْوَالِهِمْ وَأَنفُسِهِمْ, be it with their possessions, no, be it even with their person. أَعْظَمُ دَرَجَةً عِنْدَ اللَّهِ, a companion, a soldier reciting this verse on this night, that he's promised a huge station near God, God the all-perfect one, and therefore a station of perfection. 1. 2. يُبَشِّرُهُمْ رَبُّهُمْ بِرَحْمَةٍ, God gives them the glad tidings of mercy, special mercy, unimaginable mercy. 3. وَرِضْوَانٍ, forget physical mercy in manifesting itself in the form of physical bounties in Jannah. The supreme spiritual pleasure of gaining approval and satisfaction of God. Unimaginable. 4. وَجَنَّاتٍ لَهُمْ فِيهَا نَعِيمٌ مُقِيمٌ, and they shall be granted gardens, gardens which will have bounties, bounties which are eternal. خَالِدِينَ فِيهَا أَبَدًا إِنَّ اللَّهَ عِنْدَهُ أَجْرٌ عَظِيمٌ, God indeed has reward which is tremendous. Let me pause here. The question of reward in Jannah. When Imam Hussein on this night tested his companions, you're free to go. Take the cover of the darkness of the night. You're free to go, and I lift all obligations on you. All of them in unison responded that we shall never ever do that. The responses of course differ. Some said we can never imagine a situation where we have abandoned you. Yet others said, La wallahi la yakunu hadha abada, never ever will this be so. Others said, La nakhtaru al-aisha ba'dak, how can we even imagine living without you? Qabbahallahu al-aisha ba'dak, life is miserable without the presence of a righteous guided leader. Yet a fourth group said, for example, Abbas, Ali nabqa ba'dak, should we abandon you so that I live even a moment after you? La arana Allahu dhalika abada, may God never allow me to live and see that day without you. Amazing is the confession made by some of the companions. They said that, for example, Muslim ibn Awsaja is reported to have said that if I lived an extra day, I would take that opportunity to defend you with my sword and with my spear. Even if I had no sword or spear, I would still fight with stones, but I would prefer death with dignity than life without your presence. No. Sa'id bin Abdullah al-Hanafi says, La nukhalik, will never abandon you, even if I were to be killed and then brought back to life, and then I would be burnt, and then my ashes were to be spread, and then this would happen again and again, I would still prefer to die for your sake. No. A person like Zuhair says that even if this were to happen, if I were to be killed and then chopped to pieces and then brought back to life, and this would happen hundreds of times, I would still repeat again and again. Look at the firm determination. Look at the dedication. Look at the devotion. Amazing. Imam, having ascertained their status of readiness and responsiveness and devotion, he then tells them something. He says, raise your heads now. All of you are going to die tomorrow, but raise your heads. Look, there is the Jannah for you. There is the garden for you. There is the palace for you. There is the hur for you. And there is the partner for you. The riwayah says all of them saw the Jannah and their station in it. Are we surprised? Yes, if our physical eyes are the only eyes that are open. The Quran says, Surah Takathur, كلا لو تعلمون اليقين لترون الجحيم ثم لترونها عين اليقين. Surely, if you were to attain a state of certainty, you would see Jahannam even now. Well, if you can see Jahannam, of course you can see Jannah. And surely once you die, of course you shall experience it at even a higher level. How is it possible for an individual, even in this dunya, in the physical material level of his existence, to be able to experience and visualize Jannah? Well, it's not difficult to imagine if we believe that the Jannah is not something that will be created. It is already created in its own realm. Surah Al Imran, chapter 3, ayah number 133, Allah says, وَسَارِعُوا إِلَى مَغْفِرَةٍ مِّن رَبِّكُمْ وَجَنَّةٍ عَرْضُهَا السَّمَاوَاتِ وَالْأَرْضِ أُعِدَّتْ لِلْمُتَّقِينَ. Strive and struggle to attain the mercy of God, that special mercy of God. And also the garden of God, whose expanse is not a small plot of land. The expanse of the Jannah is as tremendous and enormous as to cover the heavens and the earth. Indeed, the riwayah says if a believer, single believer, were to invite all the people on earth to be his guests, his Jannah could accommodate that. And you know what? أُعِدَّتْ لِلْمُتَّقِينَ. It's not going to be created. It is already created in its own realm, in its own phase of existence. If the soul of the human being has the power to transcend limitations of space and time, one. Two, if an individual can elevate himself to reduce his distractions and his disturbances and attractions to the physical world. Three, if the Imam, who is the head of this caravan of human spirituality, can influence spiritually an individual and intensify this experience, three, then four, definitely it is possible for a human being on earth to visualize the Jannah. And that's what the Ashab did. The reason being, they were already dedicated and devoted. They had already established a lifestyle. And one of the causes was their intense engagement with the Book of God. Two, their intense engagement in the process of dua, which transformed them, which motivated them. Observe how. The Quran tells us that a person who engages in dua enjoys a high special level of proximity with Allah, which translates itself and demonstrates itself therefore in that devotion and dedication and readiness to sacrifice. For example, in Surah Naml chapter 27 ayah number 62, Allah says, أَمَّنْ يُجِيبُ الْمُضْطَرَّ إِذَا دَعَاهُ وَيَكْشِفُ السُّوءَ. Who is there other than God who can respond to a person who is desperately in need, praise to him and him alone? There's no one other than God who does that. According to this ayah, if a dua has to be true and therefore responded to, it needs three conditions. أَمَّنْ يُجِيبُ الْمُضْطَرَّ. You have to have a state of being مُضْطَرْ, in darura. You have to experience desperation. Nobody else can solve this problem of mine. I'm desperately in need. Mudtar, one. Two, إِذَا da'a. And then he calls out sincerely, earnestly, honestly, from the bottom of his heart. Two. إِذَا دَعَاهُ, and you call out to him and him alone. D, you experience desperation. You understand what you speak from the bottom of your heart. A, you ask alone from him and him. D-U-A. These are the three principles of dua according to this ayah, which guarantee therefore response. Lesser than that, there is no dua. They're just empty words which are spoken. These companions were trained by the Quran. The Quran says when you pray to God, you need to experience the reality of your relationship to Him. In Surah A'raf, chapter 7, ayah number 54, Allah says, وَادْعُوهُ خَوْفًا وَطَمَعًا إِنَّ رَحْمَةَ اللَّهِ قَرِيبٌ مِّنَ الْمُحْسِنِينَ. Don't lose hope. Pray to Him. His mercy is accessible. It's available. Provided you're good in your life. If you're virtuous, it's available. That's one level. A second level, the Quran talks to us about the relationship between the person who prays and God. Surah Baqarah, chapter 2, ayah number 186. إِذَا سَأَلَكَ عِبَادِي عَنِّي فَإِنِّي قَرِيبٌ أُجِيبُ دَعْوَةَ الدَّاعِ إِذَا دَعَانِي. Whenever one of my servants, not anybody else, asks you about me, O Prophet, then tell him, I'm not far. I'm so near that if he prays, I answer. Not only God is accessible and available, we're being told He's near to us, so near that if we just pray, provided all these three conditions of desperation and understanding and asking Him alone are there, then He promises a response. 2, no, the Quran goes one step ahead in explaining to us the nature of the relationship between a person making dua and God. In Surah Waqi'ah, chapter 56, toward the end, ayah number 82, Allah says, فَلَوْلَا إِذَا بَلَغَتِ الْحُلْقُومِ. If you were ever to see the situation where a person is about to die, the soul is about to leave the body, you are sitting close to that person, but you can't do anything to stop the process of separation of the soul from the body. نَحْنُ أَقْرَبُ إِلَيْهِ مِنْكُمْ وَلَكِنْ لَا تُبَصِّرُونَ. We are closer to this person than you are. Not only God is available and therefore you can ask for His mercy, God is so near, you pray to Him, He answers. No, God is nearer to me physically than any other human being can ever come to me. No. The Quran elevates the process of the relationship. In Surah Qaf, chapter 50, ayah number 16, Allah says, وَلَقَدْ خَلَقْنَا الْإِنسَانَ وَنَعْلَمُ مَا تُوَسْوِسُ بِهِ نَفْسُهُ. We created man, and we know every particle of his being. We have control over it, and we have knowledge over it, and therefore we know all the thoughts and the feelings and the whispers and the insinuations that cross his mind. وَنَحْنُ أَقْرَبُ إِلَيْهِ مِنْ حَبْلِ الْوَرِيدِ. And we're closer to him than his jugular vein. Not only God is available, not only God is close, He's so close that He's closer to me than every other human being. No, He is closer to me than my own basis of my physical life. No, the Quran goes one step ahead. In Surah Anfal, chapter 8, ayah number 24, Allah says, يا أيها الذين آمنوا استجيبوا لله وللرسول إذا دعاكم لما يحييكم. When Allah calls you, respond. Because in that response, there is a life for you, away from vegetable life, away from animal life. You will enter the angelic, the human, and beyond that, the angelic form of life. Respond when He calls. وَعَلَمُوا. And recognize, remind yourself, realize, experience this reality. أَنَّ اللَّهَ يَحُولُ بَيْنَ الْمَرْءِ وَقَلْبِهِ. God is closer to you than your own nafs. My nafs is the core, that irreducible core of my identity, of who I am. The collection of my thoughts, of my feelings, of my personality characteristics. That's who I am. Allah says God is closer to a human being than his own nafs. The thinker, before he thinks a thought, God is closer to the thinker than the thought. God is closer to the thought than the thinker. God is close to the thinker than the thought. God is closer to the thinking process than the thinker of the thought. That's how close he is. He's infinite and absolute in his perfection. Even before I think he's closer to me, even as I think he's close to me, even after I think he's close to me. You cannot imagine a degree of proximity greater than that. Not only God is available, not only God is close to me, not only is God closer to me than any other physical human being, he's closer to me than my very physical basis of existence. No. He is closer to me than my own nafs. No. There's one stage beyond that. In Surah Baqarah, chapter 2, ayah number 155, Allah says, وَلِلَّهِ الْمَشْرِقُ وَالْمَغْرِبُ. East and West belongs to God. فَأَيْنَمَا تُوَلُّوا فَثَمَّ وَجْهُ اللَّهِ. Wherever therefore you turn, be it the East or the West, God is there. There is a level of existence. وَكُلُّ شَيْءٍ هَالِكٌ إِلَّا وَجْهَهُ. Chapter 28, toward the end, the last ayah, Allah says, everything other than God in its core is nothing but that which God gives it. Forget God being closer to me than my own nafs and than my own thought processes and my own feelings. The thinker and the thought and the thinking in itself are nothing but that which God gives it. That level of realization which the Quran teaches, and a person who engages intensely with the Quran gradually begins to realize these realities. Are you now going to tell him that the enemy sitting in front of him is threatening him? You remember the incident when that man, Mushrik, the Prophet, was resting in a place and the Mushrik came and pulled out his sword and wanted to attack him? And he said, who is going to save you? And the Prophet said that my God is going to save me. Oh yes. And he tried to pull his sword out, and the Prophet overtook him. Took the sword from him. He says, who is going to protect you now? I said, your magnanimity. What did the Prophet mean when he said, God is going to protect me? Between the tip of the sharp edge of the sword and between the skin of the Prophet, there was a power that encompasses everything. And that is God. A person who engages in dua at that level of realization, are you going to scare him and threaten him and terrorize him and frighten him? That I brought an army of 30,000 people, humiliate yourself or be ready to die? The man has been trained by dua. You cannot scare him. He's with his Lord. And he knows nothing happens but that which his Lord wills. Quran can transform an individual. Dua can motivate and activate an individual to become devoted and dedicated. No, salah. Just look at the adhan, for example. Allahu Akbar. When you recite Allahu Akbar 4 times, you're reminding yourself, oh Lord, I admit that you are greater than all the physical powers that I have in my body. 1. 2, Allahu Akbar a second time. You are greater than all the mental, emotional, spiritual powers that I have. Allahu Akbar. 3, you are greater than all the physical forces of the universe. No, Allahu Akbar, you are greater than all the unseen, non-material forces of the universe. 1, 2, Ashhadu an la ilaha illallah. I testify by my mouth? No. By my head? No. by my heart, by the totality of my being, that in this entire universe there is no power that deserves to be recognized and admitted to and believed in and loved and praised and obeyed other than Allah. Look at how it prepares this man for the jihad. Ashhadu anna Muhammadan Rasulullah. I declare not only with my mouth, but with my head and my thinking processes. And I declare with my heart and the totality of my being that God, in your love, you have not abandoned us, and you have sent a messenger who shows us the path of goodness and guidance. And that was the most perfect man, and that was the Prophet. Hayya ala salah. Abandon everything and come to this form of communication and bonding with God. Hayya ala al-falah. There is no other channel toward prosperity other than this. Hayya ala khayril amal. Every other act therefore has to be stopped. I need to recharge myself. I need to rebond with that power that is governing the universe, and I need to become an agent in that power's hands. Hayya ala khayril amal. Why is it that Imam Hussein insisted at the time of Dhuhr, stop the battle? Aren't you Muslims? Give us time to pray. Hayya ala khayr al-amal. Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar. La ilaha illallah. The hadith says, Al-mu'adhinu al-muhtasibu kashahiri bisayfihi fi sabilillah. Wal-qatili bayna as-saffayn. There's tremendous reward promised for adhan. But there's one interesting reward, and that reward is a person who recites adhan in the proper manner. He's just like the one who is struck with his sword in the way of God. The one who has fought between the two battle groups. Adhan. Salah. You recite the Fatiha and the Surah. Slowly the majesty and the mercy of the Lord manifests itself to your heart. You are overwhelmed. You are awed by His absolute authority. After Qiyam, you go to Ruku'. In Ruku', we are taught to recite these words. And look at the connection between these words and the preparation for the battle. Allahumma inni laka raka'tu wa bika amantu wa laka aslamtu wa alayka tawakkaltu anta rabbi. Oh Lord, I have believed in you. I have entrusted my affairs unto you. I have submitted the totality of my being to you. خشع لك قلبي وسمعي وبصري وجلدي ولحمي ودمي وعظامي ومخي غير مستنكف ولا مستكبر ولا مستحسر. Oh Lord, the totality of my being has submitted itself to you. My skin, my flesh, my bones, my eyes, my ears, my heart, my brain, my nerves, my muscles. The whole of my being has submitted itself to you. Oh Lord, I'm sticking my neck out in ruku'. Amantu bik walau duribat unuqi. Even if my neck is now smitten off. That's ruku'. Understanding the majesty of the Lord, His total authority over us, and therefore the expression of obedience to Him. Sajda. I am disconnecting myself by folding my body into a particular posture in such a way that I disconnect myself from everything other than Allah. I put my head on the ground. From it I was created. I lift myself up. I was given life. I go back to it, and I'll be brought back to life. The constant reminder that I am going to die. What is my origin? What is my end? What is the path between the two? Istighfar. Astaghfirullah Rabbi wa atubu ilayh. The path that determines between the origin and the end. Istighfar and tawbah. And the Quran tells us, for example, in Surah Alaq, that's last ayah for which sajda is wajib. Come down in prostration and get closer to me. The closest an individual can get to God is the time when he is in the process of sajda. Is it now difficult to understand how these companions who engaged in the recitation of the Quran on this night and got those messages of mercy and majesty were motivated? How when they engaged in dua, They experienced that extreme closeness beyond which no closeness is imaginable, and therefore they turned out to be devoted, dedicated individuals ready to die for the cause of truth. Do you appreciate how the adhan and the salah prepares an individual to rise up against anything other than God in qiyam, and to bow down but in front of God and God alone, and then to submit yourself to the maximum possible level in the form of sajda? Indeed, Imam, after every sacrifice of a companion, would recite this ayah: فَمِنْهُمْ مَنْ قَضَى نَحْبَهُ وَمِنْهُمْ مَنْ يَنْتَظِرُ وَمَا بَدَّلُوا تَبْدِيلًا. There are those who have fulfilled their obligations, Surah Ahzab, and there are those who await their chance and opportunity to give themselves up in the way of God. وَمَا بَدَّلُوا تَبْدِيلًا. They did not even flinch for a moment. They did not waver even for a moment. Assalamu alaikum. أيها الربانيون أيها الأنصار لله ولرسوله ولأمير المؤمنين وللحسن والحسين. Tonight we commemorate the tragedy of the massacre that took place of a young infant who was innocent. On that night when the process of selection and granting of permission took place, you recall that Qasim was seated toward the end of the group, and that he came and complained to his uncle that, what about me? And his uncle tests him, and after ascertaining his readiness, says that yes, you are going to die also. But at that moment he makes a statement which shows that there was a possibility that not only would he die, but also the infant is going to die. Qasim is a bit surprised. How do you mean the infant also is going to die? إي والله فداك عمك إنك لأحد من يقتل من الرجال معي بعد أن تبلو ببلاء عظيم وابني, and my young son will also die. Do you mean the enemy is going to come and attack the camps? But you've already made arrangements. Imam ensured that the rear section of the camp, a moat was dug and fire was lit in the moat so that the confrontation should take place only from one angle. They should not be ambushed from any other angle. Attempts were made to come from behind, but the enemy failed. The confrontation took place from one side. Do you mean the enemy is going to come to the camp? And Imam says, no. A time will come when I will have to take him out. An arrow will strike him. We need to turn our attention to that time period when all the companions had fallen. Not only that, all the members of the Ahlul Bayt had fallen, and the last one was Abbas. Now Imam Hussein is all alone on the battlefield, the lonely warrior, the godly warrior, the saintly soldier. He makes a cry, he calls out, هل من ذاب يذب عن حرم رسول الله هل من موحد يخاف الله فينا هل من مغيث يرجو الله في إغاثتنا. Is there no one amongst you who can come and defend the family of the Prophet? There's no one alive now. Is there no one amongst you who even fears God so that he should not engage in this heinous crime of massacring the Prophet's family? Is there no one? Forget fear. Don't you hope? Don't you hope in God's mercy? Come and help us, and therefore qualify to deserve His mercy. Amazing. Imam at this time sends out a cry. What hope does he have for a response? It's not difficult to imagine rationally the possibility still is there for a response. Because remember, the majority of the members of the army of Omar al-Sa'ad were actually the Shias who supposedly wrote the letters of support to Imam. However, because they had been terrorized and because they had been frightened, they were forced to come here. Many of them were still reluctant. And besides, in those days, the military structure was such that everyone was an independent soldier. You had to make your own arrangements, and therefore the decision to join or to leave was still in your hands. And therefore, rationally, the possibility was there that by this cry, Imam could still invite a few. One. A second possible reason the Imam gave out this call is to make it very clear, what is your status in front of God? Do you hope for God's mercy? This is the chance. Come and help me. You have no hope, you have no belief in God. Don't you believe that there is a day of judgment when you will be asked? All right, you don't hope for God's mercy. You don't even have that faith. All right, you don't even fear death and the reckoning and the accounting. Are you human or not? Don't you believe that there is a prophet and that that prophet has a family? This is the family. Come and protect them. Imam was demonstrating to them that how lowly and degraded a human being can reach once he allows his desires to overrule him. Once he allows fear of lowly physical powers to overpower him. And thirdly, perhaps the call the Imam made. Is there no one to help me? Remember, there were cases who came to express their support, and the final moment they said, oh well, I got a family to take care of, and I got debts to pay back, and I'm ready to give you my possessions. Imam keeps on repeating one statement. Make sure you get yourself away from here. Because the Prophet has said, من سمع واعيتنا فلم ينصرنا أكبه الله على منخريه في حر النار. Whosoever hears our call and refuses to respond, God will punish him. And perhaps a fourth reason why Imam made that call out was that Karbala had another dimension. Imam is trying to universalize the movement now. He wants to eternalize the movement. The call is not only to those around him, the call is not only to those who were alive in his time, the call is beyond space and time, for all time to come and for all places to come. Imam's call is still there. The cause of truth needs to be defended even today. Should you fail, you know what will happen? Well, let me tell you what happened when you failed to help. Imam asks for his young infant to be brought to him. He says, Nawiluni ibni at-tifl hatta uwaddi'ah. Bring me my young infant. I want to bid farewell to him. Now I need to confront the enemy myself. The young infant is brought to him. However, because of the thirst that was experienced in the camp for the past 3 days, the young infant is described in the maqtal to say that يَتَلَظَّى عَطَشًا. He was just like a fish out of water. His tongue used to dart out and in thirst. Imam, according to one tradition, just holds him and prays to God that, oh Lord, a community that has depraved itself so low as not to have mercy even for innocent infants, oh Lord, you deny them your mercy. According to one narration, an arrow comes and kills the infant in Imam's hand outside the khayma. According to another narration, no, Imam challenges, carries the infant to the battlefield and challenges the people. Ya qawm, oh people, in lam tarhamuni, you don't have any mercy on me, you're targeting me. You don't even recognize that I'm the Prophet's son. You don't even want to recognize that I have committed no crime against you. You don't even want to give me the benefit of doubt, that treat me like an ordinary human being. Let's not start a battle. The battle has not yet begun with me. My companions have fallen, we can still stop. You have no mercy on me, keep that aside. This infant is innocent. In lam tarhamuni farhamu hadha at-tifl. At least this infant should be shown your mercy. You're humans, aren't you? What sin has this infant done? We are told that at that moment, Hurmala bin Kahil al-Asadi was instructed to aim his arrow. He was a sharp marksman. To aim his arrow. From a distance, the arrow came right in the laps of the Imam. The arrow managed to slash the neck off ear to ear of this young infant. Allahu Akbar. Here is Imam experiencing the loss of an innocent child. There could be no more lowliness amongst the enemies. Amazing. Now Imam holds the babe in his arm. Blood is pouring out into his arms, into his hands. The narration tells us a strange thing the Imam does. He lifts up that blood towards the sky. I don't know why, but it's difficult to imagine. The riwayah tells us, فَلَمْ يَسْقُطْ مِنْهُ قَطْرَةً عَلَى الْأَرْضِ. Not even a drop of that blood fell on the earth. Oh my God, this is a mystery. What is happening? Why is it that blood should be raised, innocent blood raised to the sky, and not a drop falls to the ground? I don't know. Maybe. This crime of this community is so enormous that Allah's punishment can come immediately. Imam doesn't want that. The blood doesn't reach the ground. Or no, the Quran says whoever gives sadaqah, that is so huge a sacrifice that, you know, when you give your sadaqah into the hands of the faqir, the riwayah says, when the Imam gives the sadaqah, the fourth holy Imam is narrated to have done that, he takes his hand back and smells it and kisses it. In other riwayah, they kiss the hand of the recipient. And when they were asked why, they said the Quran says, Inna Allah ya'khudhu sadaqat. God is the one who accepts the sadaqah before it reaches the hand of the recipient. I don't know. Is the sacrifice of this holy, sacred, innocent blood such that God Himself receives it through His angels, such that not even a drop falls on the earth? It's one of the mysteries, but it's a clear reflection of the seriousness of the crime. Imam makes only one statement. He says, Hawwana alayya annahu هون علي ما نزل بي أنه بعين الله. This crime is so great, I have got no words to express, only one word. Oh Lord, I know whatever has happened, you are seeing what is happening, you are watching what's happening. That's the only complaint I can make. And then he prays, Allahumma in kunta habasta anna al-nasr فاجعل ذلك لما هو خير منا لما هو خير لنا. Oh Lord, if in your wisdom you have decided not to now send your special victory, and I accept that wisdom, the wisdom which says that if any victory is to take place, it has to take place through the human beings themselves, not through angels. Oh Lord, if you have decided not to grant us that special victory out of your wisdom, and I accept it, then grant us the reward for this sacrifice that we have made in the akhirah. He then takes the infant down on the ground and he digs a grave. There are certain things that the Imam has done himself which have tremendously affected him. The fact that he comes to the dead body of his nephew Qasim personally, the fact that he comes to the dead body of his own son Ali Akbar, the fact that he comes to the dead body of his brother Abbas. There are certain sacrifices that are tremendous, and this is one of those tremendous sacrifices. The personal burial by his own hands of this young infant. I think one of the biggest lessons we have to remind ourselves is, if Imam called out, "Oh Lord, take your revenge from these unjust ones," we have to recognize this basic reality. Never ever should we allow the state of a community to go so low and depraved and become so merciless that another infant, innocent infant, should be killed and there's no one out there to help. Assalamu alayk ya Aba Abdullah wa ala al-arwah allati hallat bifina'ik. عليكم منا جميعا سلام الله أبدا ما بقينا وبقي الليل والنهار. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. We have reached the day which corresponds to the climax of the confrontation that took place between the forces of truth and falsehood. The history of our Imams show that right from the beginning of Muharram, they used to be in a state of mourning. But when the day of Ashura came, they were in intense grief. And this emphasis and recommendation that is made that we also on the day of Ashura should be in the constant state of mourning and grief, I wish to take this opportunity to pause and for us to have a very quick glance at the events that occurred on this day, and then the godly values and the virtues that displayed themselves, and let us then appreciate the supreme status of these heroes, and then experience that sense of loss and grief, for which may Allah reward us. And therefore we are taught on this day that when we meet each other, we should pray for each other. أعظم الله أجورنا وأجوركم بمصابنا بالحسين عليه السلام. May Allah increase our reward for gathering and assembling and recalling the tragic events that befell Imam Hussein alayhi salam. Allow me to very quickly remind ourselves of the main events that took place on this day. Early in the morning, after the prayers were established on the day of Ashur, one of the first things the Imam does, the beginning of the day, is with a dua. A dua whereby he expresses his total reliance in all times of stress and affliction in the mercy and in the power of God. Allahumma anta thiqati fi kulli karb. Allahumma anta raja'i fi kulli shiddah. Allahumma anta li fi kulli amrin nazala bi thiqa. O Lord, in all afflictions, in all troubles, you are my sole supporter. I have no one else to turn to. Nobody has the power to help individuals in such situations. How often there have been cases where our hearts have fallen weak, but you have strengthened us. How oftentimes our enemies have become strong and happy with our situation, but you have enabled us to win over them. فَأَنْتَ وَلِيُّ كُلِّ نِعْمَةٍ. I declare my belief that you are the master and the provider of all bounties and all grace. وَصَاحِبُ كُلِّ حَسَنَةٍ. Having developed that determination and displayed it, he then addressed his army. See, one of the first things the Prophet also used to do in his battle was right early in the morning, he would turn toward the army and station them and position them. In Surah Al Imran, chapter 3, ayah number 121, there's this exact description. وَإِذْ غَدَوْتَ مِنْ أَهْلِكَ تُبَوِّئُ الْمُؤْمِنِينَ مَقَاعِدَ لِلْقِتَالِ وَاللَّهُ سَمِيعٌ عَلِيمٌ. Remember the event, O Prophet? This was after the Battle of Uhud. When early in the morning you set out and you took the believers and stationed them and you positioned the army. This is exactly what Imam Hussein did on the day of Karbala, on the day of Ashura in the morning. He addressed the companions, إِنَّ اللَّهَ قَدْ أَذِنَ لَكُمْ فِي الْقِتَالِ. The permission has been granted now to engage in battle. all previous occasions, invitations and suggestions by the companions. Now is the time to strike. We can win them over. Imam refused. Come the day of Ashura, and the battle was launched the previous day on Thursday. Imam says, now the permission has been granted. And that was the general permission in the morning. Subsequently, for every individual, they came for specific permission. However, Imam doesn't launch into the attack. He first wants to awaken them, and therefore he delivers a few sermons. I would just like to very briefly quote from those sermons. In one of the first sermons where he addresses the people, he says, Alhamdulillahi alladhi khalaqa ad-dunya faja'alaha dara fana'in wa zawal. Let me remind you what the big problem is before us right now. One, the problem is the dunya. Allah has created this world. He has provided us with pleasures, but with a purpose. The problem is we have failed to recognize the purpose of the worldly pleasures. One. Two, فَالْمَغْرُورُ مَنْ غَرَّتْهُ. Deceived is he who falls into the trap of the pleasures of the world. Three, you know what? The same world in which you place so much hope and you seek to gain pleasure and comfort in this life, this world tomorrow is going to dump you. It will not give you what you want. It's just temporary, it's just superficial. Wake up. Four, the problem with you now is you have failed to recognize, you have become blind, you don't realize that who is on the right and who is on the falsehood. And your decision therefore is faulty. You are deciding on a lifestyle, on an action which will earn the displeasure of God. Let me warn you. Five, well, let me declare to you, is it not true that you are the ones who invited me to come? You promised your support, and now you're turning your backs. You are abandoning, you are deserting me. Well, let me tell you the problem. لَقَدْ اسْتَحْوَذَ عَلَيْكُمُ الشَّيْطَانُ فَأَنْسَاكُمْ ذِكْرَ اللَّهِ. You have allowed through your own weakness the devil to dominate you. And therefore you've forgotten the divine grace and the divine guidance. Allah does not misguide. You have deserved to be disqualified by your own deeds. A warning. Subsequently, he then, after a short while, delivers yet a second sermon, again, to wake them up. Look at yourselves, and look at me. Let me ask you, is there a man alive today, other than me, who is the son of the daughter of your prophet? Is not my grandfather the prophet? Is not Ali the first man who declared Islam, my father? Is not Hamza, Sayyidu Shuhada, whom the Prophet respected so much and loved and cried for, is he not the uncle of my father? Jaffer al-Tayyar, who obtained that highest status where Allah and the Prophet declared that he's got two wings in Jannah, is he not my uncle? If you forget my background, look at me myself. Have you not heard the Prophet say, Al-Hasan wal-Husayn Sayyida Shababi Ahlil Jannah? If you don't believe me, you think I'm lying to you? Well, let me tell you, since I became mature, I never spoke a lie when I knew that God is displeased with it and that God will punish. I never spoke a lie. But you don't trust me? Well, go and ask the companions of the Prophet. Go and ask Jabir ibn Abdullah. Go and ask Abu Sa'id al-Khudri. Go and ask Sahal bin Sa'idi. Go and ask other prominent companions. Did the Prophet not mention this specific status for me? You don't want to agree to my background. You don't want to acknowledge my status. You don't want to inquire from the companions. Treat me as an ordinary human being. Have I killed anyone from you? Have I taken anybody's property? Why do you want to attack? The battle has not begun. Think. Pause. Before you plunge yourself to your destruction. Spare us your words. We have no time, was the response. Yet a third sermon the Imam delivers. This is before the battle begins, in a process of awakening, whereby he then identifies those characteristics of the enemy which led them to commit this heinous crime. Let me talk to you. They refuse to listen. He says, the problem with you is you have filled your bellies with illegitimate, prohibited items, and they have overcome you, and now you're blind and deaf and dumb. That's the problem. The problem with you is قبحا لكم إنكم أنتم من تواغيت الأمة وشذاذ الأحزاب ونبذة الكتاب ونفثة الشيطان وعصبة الآثام ومحرف الكتاب ومطفئ السنن. You have turned your back away from God. You have distorted the book of God. You have deserted the laws of God. You have disrespected the commands of the Prophet. You have agreed to obey the devil. You have submitted yourself to the despots. That is the core problem. The beginning of the deviation of any human being is not because God misguides. It's because when a person receives the truth, one, understands what's right and wrong, two, deliberately rejects it, three, or refuses to live by it, four, he becomes the prey of shaitan, five, and a captive of the despot, six, and then an agent to carry out this heinous crime, seven. That's the problem. When all attempts to admonish, to advise, to awaken failed, the battle began. Inasmuch as Imam Hussein arrayed his army with Zuhair ibn Qayn to the right flank, and Habib bin Mazahir to the left flank, and Bani Hashim in the center, and the flag with Abbas. On the opposite army, the array they had was a Muqaddama and a Muakhara and a Maymana and a Maysara and a central. They had a right flank under Amr bin Hajjaj and a left flank under Shimr bin Dhil Jawshan. Umar ibn Sa'ad was in the center, and they had a group in front and then a group behind. The armies were arrayed. The first attack, wave of attack took place. Amr ibn Hajjaj from the right flank attacked. In that first attack, which was a collective one, the army of Imam Hussein with poised spears defended themselves, and individual battles took place, but the ferocity and the determination and the bravery enabled them to kill a lot of the enemies. They withdrew, they retreated. Amr ibn Hajjaj says, beware, you are facing an army of brave soldiers who are fearless, who will be ferocious, who is going to plunge themselves into death. No. Do not engage in single attacks. Forget your swords. Attack with stones. Look at the cowardly attack now. Phase 2 of the attack now, Umar Asad agrees with this opinion and advice, is an attack with stones. There is a rain of stones coming on the army. A lot of companions fall during this time. Phase 3 of the attack, Shimr ibn Zul Jawshan begins from the other flank. He attacks, but they're ferocious, they're determined, they defend. Some die. Yet a fourth phase of attack is when the enemy manages to penetrate and reach right inside the camps. The camps of the companions were a little to the side, away from the ones of the Ahlul Bayt. And there is a skirmish within the camps, but the Imam says, let them go and burn it, let them go and destroy it. We will be protected from that end. Yet a fifth phase of attack is again when Shimr ibn Dhul Jawshan makes a collective attack. Intense battle, engagement, confrontation, ferocious defense. Many fall. Come the time of Zohar. It's midday now. Imam asks for respite. They refuse to grant that respite. But the amazing thing is there are some companions who are so devoted and so dedicated. They say, we are ready to defend you. The whole purpose of existence is to live for the truth and die for the truth. We will protect you. And they stood before the Imam and they took all the enemy, sprayed them with a rain of arrows. And there is this brave companion, Sa'id. Zuhair ibn Qayn stands, defends himself and the Imam. But the other one, Sa'id bin Abdullah al-Hanafi, keeps on juggling himself and takes in arrows. By the end of the time Imam finishes his prayer, he collapses. An amazing companion, a companion who began his journey from Kufa, traveled all those miles, reach Mecca, join the Imam. Imam gives him a message, go back to Kufa, give a letter to Muslim ibn Aqil. He goes back all the way to Kufa. Muslim then has a message to send back to the Imam. The man travels all the way back to join Imam in Mecca. And then he travels all the way to Karbala. Amazing sacrifice. And yet on the final day, on the night of Ashura, he says, I swear if I'm killed, and if I'm burnt, and if my ashes are spread, I will not abandon you. And he showed his determination at the time of Zohar. After Zohar, the battle continued. Remember, even at Zohar, the battle was on, but they were being defended. Imam was being defended. Now, as the lesser companions had fallen, now the more prominent ones began to go to the battlefield. The commanders of the different flanks. Habib bin Mazahir goes to the battlefield and falls. Zuhair ibn Qayn, the head of the flank, goes to the battlefield and falls. After all the companions have fallen, now finally it was the members of the Ahlul Bayt. Ali Akbar goes, Imam personally goes to him, to his deathbed, and brings him back. Qasim goes and falls. Imam personally goes to the battlefield and brings him back. Abbas, the backbone, the support, the remaining stalwart of the army, he falls. And Imam brings him back. After Zohar, towards the Asr time, came a situation where the only adult able alive, not the sick one, was Imam Hussein, the lonely warrior, the godly warrior, the saintly soldier. The one who now wants to dedicate all that he has for the sake of God and to stand up for truth and defend against all evil. However, allow me to analyze the godly values that were displayed by Imam and Imam alone in the highest degree, and then to lower degrees by the other companions. Number one, the fact that Imam at all stages engaged in the remembrance of God. Chapter 8, Surah Anfal, ayah number 45. Allah says, Ya ayyuhalladhina amanu, إِذَا لَقِيتُمْ فِئَةً فَاثْبُتُوا وَاذْكُرُوا اللَّهَ كَثِيرًا لَعَلَّكُمْ تُفْلِحُونَ. If you want a guideline for success when you confront an enemy, well, let me tell you, be firm and always remember God. Regularly remember God. Frequently remember God if you want success. Imam Hussein began his day with the dua. Imam Hussein, we will see later on, ended his life with a dua. Imam Hussein at each stage between the beginning of the day and the end of his life continuously remembered God. He attacked and he came back. La hawla wa la quwwata illa billahi al-aliyyil azim. If I have any strength, it's God granted. And I acknowledge that and I declare that. Not only did Imam engage in the remembrance of God constantly, the second godly virtue we find him displaying is the total reliance on God. One of the secrets of success in a battle mentioned in the Quran is tawakkul, reliance on God. Chapter 3, Surah Al-Imran, ayah number 173. Remember the situation when, after the battle of Uhud, when the enemy had thought that they had defeated the Muslims and they went away, and the Muslims came back to Medina, they received news that they're planning a second attack. Alidina قال لهم الناس إن الناس قد جمعوا لكم. The Muslims were told, you are exhausted, you are defeated, you have suffered pain, but remember the enemy is going to launch a second attack. You know what was their response? They were not scared. They said, قالوا حسبنا الله ونعم الوكيل. We've got no fear. You know why? Because we have decided to fight in the way of God, one. And that God is all-knowing of our problems and our situation, two. And that God is all-powerful to help us, three. And He's all-loving to grant His help, four. Hasbunallah wa ni'mal wakil. We entrust our affairs to God and God alone. Imam Hussein displayed that reliance and remembrance on the day of Ashura. Two, the third godly virtue that we see in Imam Hussein on the day of Karbala that makes this man stand out as a unique soldier was not only remembrance of God, was not only reliance on God, but resistance and determination and steadfastness in the way of God. He did not flinch, he did not waver, he was fearless. Sabr. The same ayah which I quoted from Surah Anfal then goes on to say that continue fighting in the way of God and practice sabr. Inna Allah yuhibbu sabirin. Surely Allah loves those who have sabr. Why? The universe is created in such a way that the forces and the laws work in favor of that individual who conforms to the divine laws. And therefore, if he endures and remains determined and is steadfast in the face of all afflictions, the universe, by the power of God, comes to help him. Inna Allah yuhibbu sabirin. Are you then surprised that when people fall in the battlefield, Imam Hussein keeps on reminding, Sabran ya bani umumati, Sabran ya ahla bayti, Sabran ya ukhta, to his sister, to his companions, to his members of the household, to his cousins, Sabran. And himself finally when he falls, Oh Lord, inna lillah wa inna ilayhi raji'un, Sabran ala bala'ik. With total determination and steadfastness. No. Imam Hussein goes beyond that. The godly values and virtues that are displayed are not only remembrance, regular remembrance of God, not only reliance on God, two, not only resistance and determination in the path of God, three, no. There was a level whereby he was in total resonance and satisfaction with what was happening. You know, when you make sabr, you say, Oh Lord, this problem and affliction and stress and death and separation and loss that I'm facing, because it is for your sake, I dislike it. It's painful. It's hurting me. But I accept it. I endure it. I dislike it, but I endure. The next phase and the higher phase is, Oh Lord, not only do I not dislike it, I like it. You know why? Because I know whatever is coming to me in the form of separation, of loss, of suffering, of death, of afflictions, it is done by a master who knows me more than I know myself, who loves me, and therefore wants me to achieve higher perfection, and therefore whatever he gives me, even if it is affliction, it's good for me. Not only I don't dislike it, I like it. Sabran ala bala'ik, ridan biqada'ik. I've got satisfaction and pleasure in what is happening. Right in Mecca he declared this. He said, Ridallahi ridana ahlul bayt. The pleasure of God and the will of God is acceptable to us ahlul bayt. No. Imam Hussein's supremacy in virtue is beyond this. Not only was he in constant remembrance of God, Not only did he have total reliance on God, not only did he display resistance and determination for the sake of God, not only did he have resonance and satisfaction and agreement with whatever was happening to him, no, he went beyond that. Oh Lord, true, it's afflictions hurting me and I dislike that, but I'll endure. No. Not only will I not dislike it, but I will like it and I will love it because it's for my good, because it's coming from you, the all-merciful one. No, oh my Lord, I have resigned myself to your will. Tasliman li amrik. Oh Lord, who am I before you? You are the all-majestic one, and therefore anyone against you is small and insignificant. Oh Lord, you are the all-powerful one, and therefore anyone against you is just weak. Oh Lord, you are the all-loving one. You love me more than I love myself, and therefore who am I to decide what should I dislike or not dislike, and what should I like or not like? My heart is in total resignation to the absolute power of Allah. Tasliman li amri. You tell me what should I like, you tell me what should I dislike. Tasliman li amri. Are you then surprised that this man, when everyone else had fallen, then goes out the lone warrior, but he fights ferociously and fiercely. The enemy runs away. They're scared of him. أنا الحسين بن علي آليت أن لا أنثني أحمي عيالات أبي أمضي على دين النبي. That was his battle cry. If you don't know who I am, let me tell you, I'm Hussein, the son of that fierce warrior Ali. آليت أن لا أنثني. I swear I will not flinch. I will fight till death, but I will not submit to evil. أحمي عيالات أبي. My primary responsibility is to defend principles and the family of the Prophet. أمضي على دين النبي, and I'm ready to die. الموت أولى من ركوب العار. That's what his battle cry. A battle cry of dignity, of defiance, of determination in the way of God. الموت أولى من ركوب العار. To me, death is more preferable than a life of indignity. والعار أولى من دخول النار. And of course, indignity is better than going to the fire of hell. But there's no doubt a life of indignity has to be rejected for a death in honor, in devotion, in dedication to God. And he fought bravely. Come a time when the enemy began to overpower him. There was a moment when, toward the end of Ashura, he took rest. He came back to the camps. He called the family members. Of course, there was one son who was alive. He entrusted all his messages, his advice, the prophetic legacy that he had received from his forefathers. It was all entrusted to the next holy Imam. He then called all the other ladies of the camp for the final farewell. Ya Sakina, Ya Fatima, Ya Zainab, Ya Kulthum, alaykum minni salam. This is the final farewell. It's not difficult to imagine that they must have responded in grief for the loss of this great hero. He was not an ordinary man. He was a man who was totally devoted with every inch and ounce of his flesh and blood. He was devoted and dedicated to God. The Quran tells us that in Surah Tawbah chapter 9, ayah number 105, قُلْ اِعْمَلُوا فَسَيَرَى اللَّهُ عَمَلَكُمْ وَرَسُولُهُ وَالْمُؤْمِنُونَ. O believers, the message has been brought to you. You know what is right and what is wrong. Now you are being tested. But beware, you're free to do whatever you want. But beware, God is watching. Beware the Prophet. The Prophet in Barzakh is watching. Beware, there are certain believers who are watching. Not watching you physically, or everybody else can watch you physically. or there are others who can spy on you in manners that you can never know. We're not talking about physical watching. Allah says, you are being watched by even believers. It's not surprising that in as much as we are recollecting the narration of the events, that these events were being watched by those lofty souls of the believers in Barzakh. It was a titanic battle of confrontation between truth and falsehood. Imam Hussein now goes for the final confrontation. He fights bravely. He kills the enemy. But he does reach a point where he does want to take rest for a little while. At that moment, we are told that as he was resting and recovering, a stone came and hit his forehead. Remember, the cowards would never face him with their spear and swords only. They would use all means. They would not come in single combat with him. He was just like a wolf attacking a pack of goats, a lion attacking a pack of deer. They would all run away. They would never confront him single-handedly. Now there was this collective attack. Allow me to quote the last moments of his life. Hussein remained in one position for a good part of the day. Anyone then who came near him was too afraid to touch him or attack him. He would immediately hit back and be struck down. One man, Malik bin Nusayr, came and hit him hard on the head. Imam started bleeding. The cap that he was wearing became filled with blood. Imam says, may Allah raise you on the day with the oppressors. Here I am, the son of the daughter of the Prophet. You don't even have the respect and the recognition. You can be so defiant, you can be so degraded as to be blind to the truth. Surely you should be raised with the oppressors. Imam asks for a turban and controls the bleeding on the head. However, Shimr now comes, but not alone. He comes with 10 other soldiers from Kufa at the place where Imam Hussein is located. They surround him. However, nobody is brave enough to proceed. Umar ibn Sa'ad is approached. The time is near for the end of the man. They're about to attack him. Umar Sa'ad, don't you even have a conscience? Remember, Umar Sa'ad was the son of a prominent companion. Umar Sa'ad was also a distant relative. Umar Sa'ad, don't you have a conscience? Don't you recognize? Where is your sense of loyalty? That was the final plea that Zainab made, but it fell on deaf ears. We're told at that time, when Imam now is helpless but still fierce, and he's surrounded, his head has been struck, an arrow comes and hits his heart. He starts bleeding from the chest. The battle has ended. The battle began with one arrow when Umar Sa'ad threw the arrow at the army. The battle is now coming to an end with another arrow, the arrow which hit the Imam on his chest, and he started bleeding profusely. And Imam collects that blood, and the same behavior that he showed when he collected the blood of Ali Asghar, he took that blood toward the sky. He died and colored his beard, white beard, with the red blood. He says, this is how I am going to come on the day of judgment and meet the Prophet and ask for revenge. How could you people be so blind and disrespectful and defiant as to oppose the truth to this extent? Here is Hussein all alone, nobody to help him. Yet a young boy, Abdullah bin Hassan, though the ladies tried to contain him, he forces himself free and rushes to the battlefield in order to protect his uncle. In the last moments, one of the enemies, Bahr bin Ka'b, gallops towards the boy and strikes at him. The boy tries to defend himself. His arm is cut off. Imam assures him. Imam tells him, don't worry, sabran. Sabran, because now احتسب في ذلك الخير اصبر على ما نزل بك فإن الله يلحقك بآبائك الصالحين. Oh my son, be firm, be determined, endure. Do not fear, soon you shall join your virtuous forefathers. Hussein now lies alone on the battlefield. He has fallen from his horse. In the last moments, he prays to God, Allahumma amsik anhum qatra as-sama. O Lord, deny them your resources and your rain, your blessings. Allahumma imna'hum barakatil ard. Don't only deny him rain from above, but resources even from below. They have disqualified themselves. They have denied themselves your special mercy. Finally, after a long time passes, Shimr calls out to the people, what are you waiting for? Here is the man all alone. Attack him. But it seems the others did have that little sense of respect not to want to attack him. You needed a person who was so deadly, so brutal, so beastly, so degraded, that he could then approach Hussein. He could mount on his chest and he could deliver that final blow. However, before I end, let me remind ourselves of those final words that Hussein spoke during that time. Imam says, Allahumma muta'ali al-makan, azim al-jabarut, shadid al-mihal, غني عن الخلائق عريض الكبرياء قادر على ما تشاء. It's a dua with several phrases, but all of them an expression of the strong belief the Imam had in the power of God, in the mercy of God, in the majesty of God. Oh Lord, you gave me everything that I did not deserve. Oh Lord, I recognize these gifts are from you. Oh Lord, I have directed all my energies, be it mental, be it emotional, be it my bravery, be it physical, everything I have devoted them to you. I've resisted against evil. I've relied on your force. Oh Lord, I have been pleased with your will for me. No, oh Lord, I have submitted myself to you. No, no. Hussein goes beyond that. رضا بقضائك تسليما لأمرك. No, لا معبود سواك. Oh Lord, I accept in this entire universe there is no power who deserves to be worshipped other than you. Oh Lord, in fact, other than you, there is no one alive. Other than you, everyone is dead. Superficially they're alive, but internally they're dead. And here I am, in total submission to you, in total remembrance to you. All the pain, all the suffering is nothing, because it's all in your path. And hence the tragedy of Karbala reaches the climax when we appreciate the highness of the virtues of this man and the lowliness of the vices of the enemy. The supremacy of Karbala, the secret of the supremacy of Karbala's sacrifice is here. The virtues of this man versus the vices of the enemy. This devotion, the dedication, the determination of this man, and the decadence and the degradation and the dehuman status of the enemies. Would we then be surprised that inasmuch as God is watching the affairs, and inasmuch as the Prophet is watching what is happening, that all the other believers in the barzakh are also watching what's happening? And therefore on this day we say, Assalamu alayk ya Rasulallah. Our salutations on you, the Prophet, and our condolences for this grave loss that the Ummah experienced. Karbala should be remembered again and again. Ashura should be remembered again and again. The sacrifices and the total devotion of Imam Hussein should remind us that unless and until we also become determined to adopt these virtues and to die for them, this massacre of Karbala can happen once again. Assalamu alayk ya Aba Abdullah wa ala al-arwah allati hallat bifina'ik wa anakhat birahlik. Alaykum minna jami'an salamullah abadan ma baqina wa baqiya al-laylu wa an-nahar. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم إنا لله وإنا إليه راجعون صبرا على بلائه ورضا بقضائه وتسليما لأمره. The evening that befell on the plains of Karbala on the day of Ashura, not only did the physical sun set and bring about darkness, but for the members of the household, the spiritual sun had already set. Imam Hussein alayhi salam, in the tafsir of this surah, when he was asked, وَالشَّمْسِ وَضُحَاهَا, and I swear by the sun when it shines brilliantly. What does it refer to? There's a physical meaning, and that's referring to the sun and its physical illumination. Imam makes an allegorical interpretation and says that that refers to the Holy Prophet. وَالْقَمَرِ إِذَا تَلَاهَا, and when the moon reflects the sunlight. And Imam says that's an allegorical representation of Imam Ali alayhi salam. وَاللَّيْلِ إِذَا يَغْشَاهَا, and when the night covers it, referring to the massacre that was committed by Banu Umayyah. Of course, there's a وَالنَّهَارِ إِذَا جَلَّاهَا, we'll talk about it later. Not only did the sun set physically on this day, but the world for the Ahlul Bayt and the members of the household also became dark spiritually. And they were in tremendous grief and mourning. It is reported that after the massacre took place, when Imam Hussein was already on the ground, Omar Sa'ad now was bold enough to come forward with his army near the body of the Imam. When the ladies, including the holy lady Zainab and Kulthum, saw this scenario, they also rushed forth. There is an exchange that took place there, and she cried out to Omar Sa'ad, أي عمر أيقتل أبو عبد الله وأنت تنظر إليه. Here is Abu Abdullah fallen to the ground and he's about to be killed by your men. Do you just stand there in silence? It is said that Omar Sa'ad turned his face away. وَيْحَكُمْ, she cried, أَمَا فِيكُمْ Muslim? Is there not a single man who is a Muslim? Is it not true that the Prophet has taught us, مَنْ سَمِعَ مُسْلِمًا يُنَادِي يَا لَلْمُسْلِمِينَ فَلَمْ يُجِبْهُ فَلَيْسَ بِمُسْلِمٍ. Whoever hears a Muslim shout and ask for help and the other Muslims do not respond, then they're not Muslims. Is there not a Muslim amongst you? No response. And of course the massacre then was committed. Omar Sa'ad then gave instructions, and now one of those hideous, brutal plunderings took place on the body of the Imam. Ishaq bin Huwayza came and tore his shirt away. Akhnas took his amama and turban. Aswad took his footwear. Jami' took his sword away, and when aggression and when violence is no longer controlled, you get a situation where somebody wanted to go for the ring, but it was stuck with the blood on the finger, and the finger was chopped off. And yet another man reports that he wanted to commit this indecent act of taking off the trousers. Look at the level to which a human being can degrade himself, but Allah protects. I attempted to take off the trousers, God forbid. Imam's right hand went over it, and I cut off the right hand. And then I tried again, and his left hand went over it, and I cut off his left hand. I tried to force off the trousers. I saw the earth begin to shake. God protects. He says, at that time I had a vision. He reports it himself. And he says, I saw the Prophet, and I saw Ali, and I saw Fatima, and I saw Hassan. And Fatima was addressing, Ya Bunayya, qataluka qatalahumullah. They have killed you, may Allah kill them. And he says, but this man who was asleep in his dream, who saw this event, this man tried to cut off my hands. And Fatima alayha salam prays against him, may Allah cut off his hands and his feet. And he says, when I woke up, I found myself paralyzed, and she prayed for me to go to the fire of hell, and that is what I await for myself. The hideous crimes that were committed not only on the body, we find that on this day, recall that when the events were unfolding, things were not happening in isolation. It's a universe which God has created. It's a universe which is being run by conscious, psychic, spiritual elements, the agents. And all these agents belong and work under the instruction of God. Everything was watching what was happening, including the Prophet. Would you then be surprised that Salama reports that she saw a dream on this night, on this day, and she saw the Prophet appearing before her, and the Prophet was disheveled, and he had dust on his hair, and she asks him, Mali araka ash'ath mughabbara. How is it I see you in this state? The ayah in the Quran says, قُلْ اِعْمَلُوا فَسَيَرَ اللَّهُ عَمَلَكُمْ وَرَسُولُهُ وَالْمُؤْمِنُونَ. Each and every one of us is responsible for our actions. God says, God is watching you. And the Prophet is watching you from his station in Barzakh. And the lofty believers are watching you. Observe the reaction of the Prophet as seen in the dream by Salama. And she said, and the Prophet responds by saying, قُتِلَ وَلَدِيَ الْحُسَيْنِ. And she woke up from that dream in a state of terror, and she rushed to the glass vessel that the Prophet had given her with the clay from Karbala. And she saw blood gushing forth in that vessel. This was not an ordinary event. We're talking about an individual who has been chosen and selected by God, who devoted himself to the cause of God, and therefore you find the forces of the universe responding to this massacre. But not the hearts of the criminals. You think they stopped their massacre on the body? They then proceeded to loot and to plunder the camps of the household. They went and grabbed the possessions. They went and lit fire in the camps. The women of the household rushed out of the camps, and now they were suddenly exposed to the enemies. Some went and grabbed their headdress and took them off. Some went and removed their rings. Some went and removed the earrings. Some went and removed their anklets. Fatima, daughter of Hussein, reports that there's one man who came to me and he wanted to remove my anklet, but I found him, he was crying, and I said, what's wrong with you? And he said, well, You are the daughter and the granddaughter of the Prophet. He says, but if you know who I am, why do you do this to me? He says, if I don't do it, somebody else will do it before me. The universe responds in grief, yet there are hearts which are merciless and pitiless. They didn't stop at attacking the body. They didn't stop at attacking the camps. They now proceeded to attack the young man who was still alive. They proceeded to Ali, son of Hussein, who was on his bed, who was so sick that he couldn't even rise. And some said, the instruction to us is, لا تدعوا منهم صغيرا ولا كبيرا. No young and no old should be allowed to stay alive. Attack him. And the other said, no, we need to consult our commander, Umar ibn Sa'd. Let's find out his instructions. Shimr, that brutal beast of a person, he took his sword out. He didn't have to wait for instructions. He wanted to attack immediately, till Umar Sa'd had to stop. And Umar Sa'd was forced to stop because of one brave woman who said that, La yuqtal hatta uqtala duna. I swear you cannot touch his flesh till you kill me first. Zainab Salamullah alayha. Not only did they attack the body of the Imam, not only did they attack the camps, not only did they target the young man. Look at this cowardly act. This is aggression. This is violence and violation of all human principles let loose. Instructions are given. Umar Sa'd shouts, ألا من ينتدب إلى الحسين فيوطئ الخيل صدره وظهره. Who is there amongst the army ready to mount on his horse and go and trample the body of Hussein, the chest and the back of Hussein? Would you be surprised 10 people were ready to do that? They didn't only plunder the body. They didn't only attack the body. They not only attacked the women. They not only attacked a young, innocent, sick person. Indeed, they went for the heads. The instructions were given that all the bodies who have fallen down, they have to be decapitated. And the heads, of course, were distributed amongst different tribes. All of them trying to seek paltry, miserable gifts and pleasures from Ibn Ziyad. Oh, we have achieved something for you. Kinda came with 13 heads under the leadership of Qais bin Ash'ath. Hawazin brought 12 heads under the headship of Shimr ibn Dhul Jawshan. Tamim, the tribe of Tamim, brought 17 heads. Banu Asad brought 16 heads. Mudhaj brought 7 heads. And the rest of the heads were brought by different people of the tribes. Let me pause here. The massacre that was committed on this day and that which continued till the night is horrendous. There's no doubt about it. But just to sit and recall and to grieve is not sufficient. I would like to remind ourselves of something else that we're supposed to do. Look at this riwayah, for example. The 6th holy Imam is reported to have said, Man zara al-Husayna yawma Ashura. Whoever goes and makes ziyarah of Imam Hussein on the day of Ashur. وَبَاتَ عِنْدَهُ. And then stays for the night. Tonight. Not the night preceding Ashura. The night succeeding Ashura. Tonight's Eve. وَبَاتَ عِنْدَهُ. You know what is the reward for just doing that? كَانَ كَمَنِ اسْتُشْهِدَ بَيْنَ يَدَيْ رَسُولِ اللَّهِ. The reward for that is as if you were present there in Karbala and died for Imam Hussein. Oh, just presence in the grave? Just spending this particular night? What is the significance? Question. Allow me to offer a suggestion. Remember that riwayah, that hadith that we mentioned right in the beginning, that the 8th holy Imam talks to Rayyan bin Shabib and tells him, Yabna Shabib, in sarraka أن تسكن الغرف المبنية في الجنة. O Shabib, if it's your aspiration that you should be granted access to the higher chambers and higher stations in paradise, then two things have to be done. فَلْعَنْ قَتَلَةَ الْحُسَيْنِ, express your hatred for the killers of Hussein. Ask for them to be cursed. Cursing meaning that, O Lord, inasmuch as you're all merciful and keep on sending your blessings down, but there's this group of people whom you should deny your blessings because they have deliberately opposed you, because they have deliberately defied your commands, because they have deliberately committed this dastardly, cowardly act of killing the son of the daughter of the Prophet. One, you need to express and pray for cursing. Two, وَقُلْ مَتَى مَا ذَكَرْتَ يَا لَيْتَنِي كُنْتُ مَعَكُمْ فَأَفُوزَ فَوْزًا عَظِيمًا. Oh, I wish I was there on this night. Oh, I wish I could do something. Oh, I wish I would have developed that level of determination that all the companions had, whereby they used all the energy that God gave them and they dedicated it to the defense of this righteous man. No, they gave it all up in devotion to God. Oh, I wish I was there. I could have participated. This is the sentiment that we need to develop tonight. How do we do that? There's no doubt that grief is a natural response. Anyone faced with a situation of loss of the beloved, of close people, or loss of even possessions, loss of anything that's significant and prominent in your life, you would naturally experience grief. In fact, some psychologists say that in as much as it's natural to eat when you're hungry and to cry when you're hurt, indeed, even when your nose itches to sneeze, it's natural to experience grief. However, the experience of grief has several stages. According to the results of observations of a variety of people who experience grief on different occasions, psychologists have said people who grieve pass through 4 stages. Stage number 1 is a stage of shock, disbelief. They're not ready to accept. They're just overcome. They're overwhelmed. They become numb. They probably even have difficulty in thinking what is happening. That's the first stage of grief, shock. A second stage they've identified is a stage of apparent control. They seem to show that they are stoic and they are in charge. However, they do feel empty and dead inside. There's a sense of depersonalization at that stage. That's stage number 2. Grief is not yet resolved. Stage number 3 is sometimes people enter into a state of regression, whereby their past behaviors in times of stress re-express themselves. They tend to experience pain now, a sense of doubt, a sense of uncertainty, indeed a sense of anger. Why did it happen? And why me? And a sense of helplessness and a sense of withdrawal and self-centeredness. After this phase, gradually they come out from regression and go back to adaptation, where they begin to realize, no, our expectations are too high to expect that the dead and the deceased should still be alive and the relationships should be the same. They try to restore and return back to normal life. The intensity and the duration of this grief and whether it can become pathological or abnormal would depend on a variety of factors. Number 1, on the state of the belief of the individual. Number 2, on the past history and the personality characteristics of the individual and the ability to cope with stress. And number 3, on the deceased, the personality of the deceased, the degree of attachment to the deceased, on the suddenness of the loss. If you observe these factors, when you come to Karbala, all of them operate at a high level to ensure that you would experience grief at a very abnormal level. Yet if you observe the behavior of Hazrat Zainab and the other ladies, you find that their response is very controlled. They have grief, yes, but it's restricted within the limits. And this is what I wish to remind ourselves, the godly values that Karbala can teach us even at the time of intense grief. Look at the comfort that Imam Hussein alayhi salam provides to the ladies even before he departs. In the last farewell, where he calls all the ladies of the household, and he tells them that this is the final farewell. It's interesting. He trains them, he educates them, he prepares them. He says, "Ista'iddu lil bala." You need to prepare yourself. Beware, all that has happened so far is just the beginning. There's more to come. Nothing should catch you suddenly. 1. 2. Remember that اعلموا أن الله تعالى حافظكم وحاميكم. Realize, recognize, experience this reality with the core of your heart, that God is your protector. Not only God is the author and the creator of the universe, 1. Not only is He in constant control of the universe, 2. Allah in Surah Fatih, chapter 48, ayah number 7, Allah says, وَلِلَّهِ جُنُودُ السَّمَاوَاتِ وَالْأَرْضِ. All the forces in the universe, the physical and the non-physical, they are mere soldiers in the hands of God. Do you think your heart is under your control? Your eyes and your faculties are under your control directly? Oh no. They're under our control indirectly. Primarily, they're under His control. Secondarily, they're under our control. Not only our physical faculties, even our non-physical abilities. Not only us, the entire universe. وَلِلَّهِ جُنُودُ السَّمَاوَاتِ وَالْأَرْضِ. Remember this, recognize this, realize it, accept it with the core of your being. أَنَّ اللَّهَ حَامِيكُمْ وَحَافِظُكُمْ. God is going to protect you. The whole universe is under His control. Are you surprised the degree of calmness and control they then experienced despite the grief? Next, Imam tells them, don't worry. Don't only remember God is the protector, there's a promise for the future. وَسَيُنْجِيكُمْ مِنْ شَرِّ الْأَعْدَاءِ. These enemies, they're not going to win over you. There is light at the end of the tunnel. Don't worry. The grief and the pain and the suffering is temporary. Number 3, وَيُعَذِّبْ عَدُوَّكُمْ بِأَنْوَاعِ الْعَذَابِ. The enemy is going to be punished. Not only is God the protector, not only is God the provider, not only God is going to punish, finally, وَيُعَوِّضَكُمْ مِنْ عَنْ هَذِهِ الْبَلِيَّةِ بِأَنْوَاعِ النِّعَمِ وَالْكَرَامَةِ. This process of exposure to afflictions is a necessity so that you may achieve the higher states of reward. Are you surprised then that the mode of expression and the experience of grief of Zainab, salamullah alayha, and the other ladies of the family is controlled and it's calm? They've been educated. And Imam tells them, فَلَا تَشْكُوا. Don't complain, don't protest. وَلَا تَقُولُوا بِأَلْسِنَتِكُمْ مَا يَنْقُصُ مِنْ قَدْرِكُمْ. Don't even speak a word that may reduce your reward. Be totally in control. Amazing, they were in control. No, not only were they in control, they even became sources of comfort and care for the others. No. Zainab went to the stage of becoming even confrontational and challenging to the enemy. When she reached the court of Yazid, she challenges him. She quotes verses from the Quran which clearly say, if you think you have been granted respite because you are a good person and that God has not manifested his punishment immediately, don't ever be deceived to think that therefore you are good and therefore God has rewarded you for all the good acts that you have done. Chapter 3, ayah number 178. وَلَا يَحْسَبَنَّ الَّذِينَ كَفَرُوا أَنَّمَا نُمْلِي لَهُمْ خَيْرًا لِأَنفُسِهِمْ إِنَّمَا نُمْلِي لَهُمْ لِيَزْدَادُوا إِثْمًا وَلَهُمْ عَذَابٌ مُهِينٌ. Don't ever think, don't let the disbelievers ever think that if God has not immediately punished them for their transgressions, that is somehow good for them. In fact, God is letting them go. Be a little more free. Sink a little more in the abyss of destruction. Because when God will manifest his fury and displeasure and power, you shall suffer a punishment which is disgraceful. You don't speak that anywhere. Especially so in the presence of a dictator. And yet this woman is in grief, but she's calm and controlled. She's comforting and caring to the others. No, she's challenging and confrontational. No, she was trained in the household of purity and perfection. Not only was she in control, not only did she provide comfort to the others, not only was she confrontational, she experienced that supernatural level of peace and comfort. When in Ibn Ziyad's court, Ibn Ziyad mocks at her. You see what God has done to you and your family? You've been destroyed. It's God's will. كيف رأيت صنع الله فيك? How do you see God's method of treating you? You know what her response was? ما رأيت إلا جميلا. I swear by God that whatever God has treated us with is not terrible. It's not bad. It's not good. No, she doesn't say any of these. She said it was nothing but good. Nothing but good. Every suffering, every affliction, every man who fell, every man who was massacred, every stress and trauma and tragedy we suffered, it was nothing but beauty and grace and goodness for us. مَا رَأَيْتُ إِلَّا جَمِيلًا. How do you explain that? Surah Hashr, chapter 59, towards the end. هُوَ اللَّهُ الْخَالِقُ الْبَارِئُ الْمُصَوِّرُ. He is the creator. He is the provider. He is the one who fashions and molds. لَهُ الْأَسْمَاءُ الْحُسْنَى. All the beautiful, infinite, perfect names belong to God and God alone. يُسَبِّحُ لَهُ مَا فِي السَّمَاوَاتِ وَمَا فِي الْأَرْضِ. And whatsoever is in the heavens and the earth is in total praise of him. The rest of the universe is in praise of him. You are blind if you don't appreciate that. But we do appreciate, and we are also in the praise of him. Because he's the creator, one. And because he's all loving, two. And therefore whatever he creates is nothing but good, three. Even when it reaches us, it appears to be bad. But that's superficial. Inside it's good. Temporarily it's suffering. Permanently it's reward. Superficially it's hurting. But deep down it's a pleasure. And that is why we say, if there is reward promised on this day, if the riwayah says that man zara al-Husayn yawma ashura hatta yadhilla indahu bakiya, whoever visits Imam Hussein, not necessarily in Karbala, even here, and then he cries, and he cries the whole day and the night, like tonight. لَقَى اللَّهَ يَوْمَ الْقِيَامَةِ. He will meet his Lord on the day of judgment. with tremendous reward. With the explanation that I've offered, that reward depends, A, on us appreciating the evil, wicked values of the enemy and us experiencing a hatred, a dislike, an intense dislike for it, and therefore anger builds up. I hate this, and I pray for the la'na. Oh, incidentally, I don't only hate in them. If I have it within me, this anger should make me change myself and remove the traces of that evil in my life. 1. 2, I identify the godly values in these supreme heroes. I develop a liking for it and a love for it and that aspiration. Oh, I wish I was there. And I would experience and express my determination. Oh Lord, every ounce of energy that you give me, I give it back to you. With dedication to defend the Imam, and with devotion to meet you and experience and receive your reward and your pleasure. Assalamu alayka ya Aba Abdullah wa ala al-arwah التي حلت بفنائك وأناخت برحلك عليكم منا جميعا سلام الله أبدا ما بقينا وبقي الليل والنهار يا حسين يا حسين